Hello, welcome to the Cranbrook Academy of Art. I'm Susan Ewing, the director, and I know many of you have come today as part of the open house, and I want to especially extend a welcome to you. A few of you I met over lunch over at the dining hall, a few I met in studio. So again, thank you for taking the time out of your schedules to visit us today and to ask the good questions, and I hope that we hear back from you very soon. I'd like to introduce the founding designer in residence in our new 4D design department, Carla Diana. Carla is a visionary designer, author, and educator who explores the impact of future technologies through hands-on experiments in product design and tangible interaction. She's designed a range of products from robots to connected home appliances and has taught and lectured on the topic of designing smart objects at numerous prestigious universities throughout the world. Carla is an ongoing collaborator with the Georgia Tech Socially Intelligent Machines Lab and a fellow at the innovation firm Smart Design, where she founded the Smart Interaction Lab. Her seminal article, Talking, Walking Objects, appeared on the cover of the New York Times Sunday Review in January 2013, is a good representation of her view of a robotic future. I will now turn the podium over to Carla Diana, who will introduce our guest, Brendan Davis. Thank you. Or Dawes, I'm so sorry. Excuse me, I can't read my own writing, but I know better. It's Brendan Dawes today. Thank you. My apologies, Brendan. Excuse me. We're all human.
Thank you. Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thanks so much, Susan, for that great introduction. I am very, very excited about the 4D design program. Some of you have come and spoken to me. Those of you who haven't, there'll be an opportunity to speak to me and Brendan after the lecture, so just stick around and come see me, and we will move to another location. But 4D, the vision of 4D is to look at our physical world around us and think about all of the ways that it is imbued with data flowing through it. So it may mean a physical object that comes to life with electronics, or it may mean a projected image, it may mean augmented and virtual reality. And we have a brand new department, and we will welcome our first cohort of students in the fall of 2019. And in doing so, I've been thinking about people who I've wanted to be associated with the program, and the very first person I thought of was my friend and co-conspirator in the world of the digital and the physical, Brendan Dawes, because we have both had this real passion for thinking about interaction, and not just thinking about a rectangle of a screen, but actually thinking about how does the digital world manifest itself in the physical world, and then how does everything that we see in our physical world come and influence what we see in our digital world, and pushing and pulling back and forth. And that's exactly the kind of work that Brendan does. So I see him as squarely, if you ask what 4D design is, I would say sit tight, you will see it here. And Brendan is, he speaks internationally at large festivals. He is an artist and a designer. He's written 2 books about interaction design. His work is in the permanent collection of the Museum of Modern Art in New York. He has won several awards for his creative work, and he works with many clients such as Google, Twitter, MailChimp, Airbnb, many others that I am forgetting, but I will let him talk about them himself. So without further ado, here's Brendan Dawes.
Hello, everyone. Lovely to be here. And it's an honor to be here. Cranbrook is such a legendary institution. And so it's really great that Carla got this job and invited me. And so now, probably like maybe many of you in this field, my mum has no idea what I do for a living at all. She even came to a solo exhibition I had in the UK once and went round it all. All my work was on display. And she still has no idea, but she said it was lovely. Now, what I did, I wanted to try and explain to my mum what I do, because it is hard, you know. I think it's, you know, the idea of 4D, trying to explain to someone what that is, can be a little bit difficult, and especially for someone like me, and my peers who work in this space, it's hard to explain. You know, if you're a graphic designer, you say you're a graphic designer. If industrial designers say you're an industrial designer. But all these things are kind of merging, and I think that's why 4D is really exciting place to be. So I'm a visual person, and I thought, don't worry, Mum, I will do you a diagram to explain what I do. So I drew her this, and you see, Mum, it's like what it is, right? No, sit down, don't go. I said, Mum, it's like art, right? It's a shape, it's art, and then there's design, and then there's technology, and where those things coalesce in the middle is like that's kind of the shape of what I do, because I think of things in shapes and forms, right? And so it's that, Mum. Can you see it? Can you see it? And she looked at me and said, I told my hairdresser you invented Google Maps. To which I said, yeah, that'll do. That's fine. Close enough. But I think what I do is I'm a collector, really. I'm curious, probably like everyone else in this room. And I collect things, and I've always collected things in various different ways. Before I got into this idea of doing this as a living, I worked in a factory for 8 years, drilling holes in fiberglass, but don't worry, I'm not going to bore you with that. And that was a real boring job. But I was also, at the same time, I was compiling break beats for a record company in London for literally no money. And I would go into vinyl record shops and find obscure loops and break beats, and then compile them for this record company in London. And then they would put out these albums that DJs would use to scratch with or rap over or whatever. So it was really the idea of ready-mades, which I think is still core to the way I work. I was finding these things and then putting them together in hopefully interesting ways. And then another core part of my growing up was this baby, a Sinclair ZX81 personal computer. This was my first ever computer in 1981. It had 1K of RAM. You can't even make an animated GIF in that nowadays. But what I loved about it was I had to learn how to program, because you plug this thing into your TV, and you know, there was no GUI. There was just a cursor, a blinking cursor that stared back at you from that screen and just said, "What are you looking at?" You know, and it was like, okay, so right, I better type things, and so you were encouraged to just try things. You know, nothing was going to blow up. No one was going to die. You just tried things. And you could load things in off cassette, and you had to get the volume right. And people that are similar age to me will know all about this. But it was, to me, it wasn't, the idea of a computer was, it was a box to make things with. There was a power in that. You know, and I'm completely, I left school with literally zero qualifications. I didn't go to university or anything. So for me, this was a black box that offered possibilities for me that I could pour my imagination into, but it was through code. I also had, I can reveal I was Vitamin Beat, so we'll do autographs later. So I was, and then I was involved with a rave scene in Manchester for a short time. And I had a few 12-inch singles that made no money whatsoever. But it was fun, and I played a few gigs. And my brother, because I was just me, again, it was me using computers to make things with. And in this instance, I was making like rave records. They were just instrumentals. And I then had to like play PAs, right? So it was just me. So I thought, that's a bit boring. So I rang my brother up, my younger brother, and he was heavily into drugs. Like, you know, the rave scene was all, you know, obviously associated with drugs. And so when I asked my brother, I said, do you want to come on stage and do like this big gig in Liverpool, this famous club? and just pretend to play the keyboards. And he was like, yeah. It's like, and he did the gig, and then I never saw him the rest of the night. I don't know what happened to him. But I think, this is all the idea of found things and using computers to take things and compile them in different ways. And I'm inspired by things like this that isn't digital. This is Bella Kolarova, an Czech artist. And this is, as you can see, just paint swatches, right? So if you apply compositional thoughts and you apply the idea of a pattern, it becomes something else. And I love this one. This is one she's done with button fasteners. And the point is that these are things that you walk past every day in the supermarket and you don't give them a second thought. But if you step back for a moment and you can take those things and apply some compositional thoughts and aesthetics, and it can become something else. And I think that's what I do now. She's done things in the shed and stuff like that, which I think is really nice. So that's what I do now. I make these little experiments that on their own aren't particularly impressive. They just do one thing. So I'll wake up in the morning and think, how do I wrap lines around a sphere? Or how do I rotate something in 3D? Or how do I make sound, make an object, do something? Or how do I connect LEDs to the internet? Whatever. So I'm doing all these little experiments, and then I kind of put them away, the idea of like a digital cupboard. So I do these little experiments, and then in the hope that one day a client piece of work will enable me to combine some of these things into a thing that will then manifest into a piece of work. So I encourage you to constantly make stupid things because it's how you combine them that is key. So I'm going to show you some of the work, but more importantly, I'm going to talk really about behind the scenes and the thinking behind the work. And as Carla mentioned, we're kind of both into the idea of the analog and the digital and that space in between. There's something interesting there. I love digital technology, but I also love physical things and stuff like that. So, but I think when you fuse the two, something interesting happens between the two, and that space is one I think is rich for exploration. So let's go back to vinyl again. I like my jazz. I like all kinds of music, but I like Coltrane. And I recently rebought a vinyl record player, and what I love about it is I think it's kind of a human experience. You put the vinyl on the platter and you drop the needle on there, and before the music starts, there's some moments of silence, some static, some noise. And to me, that is anticipation, and I think that excites me, and I think that is a very human trait, and I think we don't want to lose that. So I really love that experience of flicking through the vinyl, choosing like this big image and putting it on a record deck to play. Equally, though, I also love. I listen to most of my music through Spotify, right? So probably like many of you, and I can dial up any song and it will just be there, and I think that's pretty amazing, and discover new artists. I've discovered way more music doing that than when I was younger going through record shops. You don't meet the weird characters and stuff, but I do kind of, I like Spotify for that. So this universality and the idea of infinite records, but I also love the vinyl. So I made a device that would try and combine and fuse the two that I call Plastic Player. It's an open source project, so if you want to get the web address on GitHub, you can make this thing yourself, and other people have made them, and I've had emails, people talking about it and how much they love it. And it was born out of, again, found things, these ready-mades. I had these 35mm slides that were in a cupboard in my studio that were there for years. And I thought, well, maybe they could be quite cool little tiny albums. I think there's a cuteness to this as well, which is quite nice. And so they've got NFC tags on the back. And so anyway, rather than me talk about it, I will show you. And I use this every day. This isn't some kind of future fiction video that I just made that doesn't actually exist. This thing exists on my desk. I use it every single day. And you can forward to the next track.
Just like a paper
And you're probably going to say, where can I buy it? Because that's what I get asked a million times. Nowhere is the answer. I've done, you know what? I've done hardware, and I've sold hardware, and it has the word hard in it for a reason. So you know, and then you've got to have a support mechanism when things go wrong. There's a whole back-end system, so I can put in albums in the database, and that's how the NFC stuff works. But that's why I made it open source. For well, if you want to make it, you can do that. But it is that, you know, I got this email saying it's a magical experience. This guy who built one, and that's what I want. I want to put things into the world that people go, you know, there's something magical about it. And so for me, it kind of fuses the analog and the digital, and you might see some of that in the other bit of the work. So that's obviously, I made that for me. I didn't get paid to do that, but you'll see in a moment that even stuff I make for myself comes back on me through paid client work. But I also thankfully, I do get paid to do this stuff. Otherwise, I would be very poor. And I've got to eat. So I have this phrase, data by itself is not enough, data needs poetry. So I do quite a bit of data visualization, but my stuff is kind of more data art. So whether you can read things into my stuff, I don't know. But I don't get employed to do that. I get employed to make pretty pictures mostly. So this is an example of that. I always think that we need to find the poetry in between the lines of the data. So here's one from the cupboard that I mentioned. This was a little interface I was playing around with many, many years ago, and it's the mathematics behind a sunflower head. And it's the same mathematics that you can probably see the shape of the head of a sunflower there. So this was the idea of, you know, maybe an image gallery or something like that. It's playful. It almost feels tactile in the way the interaction works. So the reason I show you that is in the UK, we have this company called EE, who are a mobile telecoms company, who are huge. And they came to me and said, we're launching 4G services across the UK, and University College London are going to collect 3 days' worth of social media traffic, and they're going to give it to you, and can you then make 11, we're doing 11 cities, can you make 11 pieces of art for each city, and then as a giant PR exercise, we go and gift it to the city, and we have a civic reception with a mayor, and this is actually what happened. And so I was like, wow, this is in 2012. So I said, this is an amazing job, right? So they gave me 1,000 tweets. University College London said, look, here's how the format of the data is. You know, do you want to go and play with that and create a system? So when they give me the real data, I just plug it in, I press a button, and it makes this artwork. Some of this is really hard work. I'm just like sitting back pressing buttons. But so I went away and played with this stuff and started to think about this head of a sunflower idea, and could I map data to it? So, and just kicking things around, just playing different things, and I didn't really know what this was, but it was something that I could show the client where things were heading. You know, the client, oftentimes they want something that's like different. They come to you, we want something, you know, different and like innovative. could you show us something you've done before that it will be like? Well, no, because you want something new, and which scares them. I can understand that. So there has to be this trust, right? So I had this thing ready to go. I was kind of happy with where it was going, and I was reading in like 1,000 tweets and doing this thing, and then they did Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and on the Monday they gave me the link to download the data. And I logged on and downloaded the London one. And the London one was 6 million rows of data. So I then tried to load it in my system that I'd been playing with 1,000 things, and it just said, no, I don't think so. And it just crashed and did not work. I mean, just like, the spinning beach ball? I was just staring at that for hours, And the agency, they had all the media books. So I can't ring them up and go, it doesn't work, sorry. They've got all this media books. So they're ringing me up and saying, how's it looking, Brendan? And I'm like, I am crying right now. And I'm crying for a different reason than they thought. So eventually, and I work on my own, there's no one to turn around to and go, what, help? I don't even own a dog. So I eventually, you realize that actually what you can do, you can load in. It's all about going back to simplicity. I loaded in one row of data, and it made a graphic and put that on the canvas. You could do that for 1 billion rows, right, or more. So that's what I did. So these pieces are not meant for on screen. They're actually giant print pieces that were diasect mounted and gifted to each city. So this is London. And it's 4,320 possible points on this kind of sunflowery shape. And time is mapped from the center outwards. And the colors represent different subjects that me and the PR company chose that people were talking about at the time. So in the middle, you can see lots of different colors and people talking about various things. And then this middle ring, you can see that it's mostly this kind of beigey white color, right? That is because on the middle day, Hurricane Sandy hit the eastern seaboard of the United States. And even though this is London, on Twitter, everyone was talking about Hurricane Sandy. And so it coalesces, you can see how Twitter coalesces around a subject. And the red thing, there's like a big load of red circles. So the more people talked about it at that moment in time, the bigger the circles got. The red area, that's when Obama visited New York. So that's people talking about Obama in respect of Hurricane Sandy at that exact moment. You can see then that everyone goes to sleep. So you see there's like this black area before the last outer rim. That's people basically asleep. So, there's no one on Twitter that much. Just for London, don't forget. And then, of course, it shows the transient nature of Twitter because the next day after Hurricane Sandy, no one's talking about it because they've done their empathetic tweets. They've shown the world they're caring about it. But the next day, here's a picture of my cat. So it shows the transient nature of Twitter. Here's a close-up. The line sort of connects where things have been retweeted. And I never, when I created this system, I don't know exactly what I'm going to get. I'm creating a system for things to play within. These are some of the subjects. You can see it wasn't really highbrow. Strictly Come Dancing, you have Dancing with the Stars. Strictly Come Dancing is the original. The weather, Obama, New York was the Hurricane Sandy bit, right? And Skyfall had just come out. And you can see, all these colors that it makes, all different tweets and subjects, and that's the Obama one. Again, so this is all made in processing, so outputted very high resolution images. I think it was actually PDF. Now, what I like about this one, the middle one is Manchester, where I worked for 12 years. There's a football club, soccer, sorry, and they were playing, Man United were playing on the last day, Manchester United, one of the world's biggest clubs, and they scored 4 goals. And you can see these red explosions that represent Manchester United, and that is just from tweets. I didn't search for goals. It's just when I was searching for Man United, and you can see these explosions when they score at that exact moment. And I think there was Southampton on the first one. And so yeah, this got a lot of PR at the time, and it was on a lot of blogs, and apparently it gets used in a lot of when agencies are pitching about doing data visualization work. Apparently it's used a lot. But I didn't get a load of data viz work after this, which is weird. You think, oh, open the floodgates, hello, and it's like, no. But people reference it all the time, which is really, really nice. Document your work. I think this is really, really important, and I'm sure a lot of you are already doing that. And there's also different ways to do it. Obviously, photographs and journals and stuff like that. But there is also a side effect of if you code and you use this thing called a Git repository, where you write a piece of code and then you upload it to the repository and comment on it for other developers or just for yourself, right? That is, you're logging things. And that is essentially a diary entry. So I thought, well, I could take that. So there was this piece of work that I did. This is a 30-screen installation in a building in Manchester, and it was all reactive. The color changed to how much energy was being used in the building. It all moved. I haven't got any video, unfortunately. As you walk past, the idea, it was called fermata, which is a musical term that some of you may know. And it means a note that is extended beyond what it should be. So I like the idea of that. So as people walk past, they kind of get extended into the piece. And we had a big opening night, and people were playing with the installation, and this was like 6 months of work. I love this guy. Check him out. It's like he is not impressed, right? He's like, this is awful, right? Yeah, he didn't smile all night. I don't know what was up with him. But this woman is really enjoying it, which is great. And you can see the blue is reflected in some of the art there. And there's tweets and things like that. But what I realized was that I was logging all my code and data. So I took that, and it was essentially a journal. So I made a book that from the repository, and then I gave it to the client. I like to give clients thank you presents after a piece of work, because they're paying you to do the stuff, and I think that's a nice thing for them to do. Rather than them just thanking you, I like to thank them. So I make these hardback books of a project and send it to the client afterwards, and it shows the journey that we've all been on. And we forget the kind of when I was like very antsy or a pain to work with, which I am occasionally, as Carla will confess. And then there was notes, the analog stuff was in there, and some of the stuff that no one ever saw, and that kind of stuff. So I encourage you to, constantly document your work as an artifact in itself, and allow for. Look at the scraps that you throw away, because sometimes there is beauty in there, and we sometimes discard these things too readily. And we hear a lot about failure is good and all that kind of stuff. I tried to pay my mortgage once with failure. It didn't work. So I like success personally, but failure is part of that. Failure is part of the journey, as we all know. So this is really a story about mistakes and a naivety, really. And things like this. This was my pencil shavings when I worked for a couple of weeks or a week with Google, and we were just doing sketches, and I realized that all my pencil shavings was essentially the side effects of working with them. So I put it in a timeline. I just need more friends, to be honest. But what I wanted to show you with this was I got contacted to do. There's a company called Platts, and still don't really understand what they do, but track commodity prices when things go on tankers like oil and liquid natural gas and stuff like that, and the prices change every nanosecond or something. It's crazy. So people employ them for lots of money to track all this data, and they have this big event in London at the Mayfair Hotel where they invite all their rich clients, and what they did was they created this 360-degree wraparound projection, and they wanted me to create something where so they could stand in it and they could see what Platts do in a kind of entertaining way, enough for them to then talk about in more detail. So as I just talk about that, I'll show you that. So this thing was 8,000 pixels wide. This is the HD version because they then wanted to show it not in the projection. So this was another version, but it gives you the idea of it, right? So that is not a map of the world. That is just the ports around the world. So data is making that map. And again, that was actually, we didn't know we were going to do that. I was just plotting the ports, and I said, oh, it's made a map. That's cool. And like, we don't need a map. And they're like, wow, that is, yeah, let's go with that, because it shows just how many ports around the world, right? And then I had all these refineries. This is all from data. And then each one of these is a ship. And these are all crude vessel, crude oil. And they go to their starting destination. And then oil products. And all these transitions are really, really important. You know, you're trying to tell a story. And I hated that we had to have the word departure ports on there. It really bugs me. But anyway, sometimes you have to make these compromises. Liquid natural gas. So, yeah, and then we cut to... So this is the bit I want to talk about. So you can see that the ships are avoiding the land, right? That's all worked out algorithmically because they only gave me the start and the end destination in latitude and longitude. And they went, there you go. I was like, yeah, but how? You know, the ships don't fly, you know, across the land. So I had to work out how to do that. In the interim, though, I did a version where it was I just drew lines from the start and the end of all the ships in the different categories, and I sent it to them. You know, it was kind of born out of naivety because while I was trying to work out this algorithm, I said, look, I've done this. It's like a crow flies version, and they went, oh my God, we love it. I was like, what? I said, no, but it's stupid, isn't it? It's like ships don't do that. They don't fly. And they were like, no one's ever shown us that visualization, and yet you can see where the activity is. And I nearly threw this stuff away. Why would I show them this? Because it's like kind of stupid, right? But they absolutely loved it. So much so that this image was actually printed as an invite to the event. To like, you know, they were inviting like the Saudi royal family and stuff like that. It was proper high end, and this was the image that was on the invite, and it was a joke. It was a mistake, but that's what they loved, you know. And again, I think I printed it out and sent it to them as a thank you. So embrace your mistakes. Don't be, you know, in the morning look back at the scraps because you something interesting might stir back at you. And attached to that is do things you don't know how to do. I like to do things that, you know, doing things that I'm an expert in, which I'm not an expert in any of this. I'm still learning every day. But it kind of bores me to do the things I know how to do to some extent. So I like to scare myself, and I think you often make better work out of that. And, you know, it's amazing to me, you know, that I get these super corporate clients sometimes coming to me. You know, everyone wants cool, don't they? You know, everyone wants to be sexy. You know, even Price Waterhouse, right? So Price PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC as they're now known, are like, you know, the corporate of the corporate. They're business consultants, one of the world's biggest business consultancies. And I just get this email directly to me saying, well, we've got this, we're doing this data lab in London at the headquarters, And we've got this wall. So imagine this wall on the left, there's nothing on it. And we're going to have all this technology, touch screens and VR and AR and something else R. And you know, and we got clients can book in for a day, and they're going to pay them a lot of money, and you know, and we'll explore their data. But could you make like a graphic, a data visualization for this 10-meter wide wall? So I said, yeah, no, this sounds great. I'd love to, you know, let me come down to London. And so this room was being built when I first went down there. So this is like the render. And I had a chat with them. I said, you know, we could definitely do that. You know, no problem. But why don't we do something else? There's an opportunity here, because as soon as you put a still on the wall, it's kind of out of date, and you're like this dynamic company, and data's constantly flowing and moving and all this kind of stuff. So stupidly, I came back to them with an idea. I said, why don't we put 220 fabricated cubes on a wall, each with 4 LEDs, all controlled with data, and it's also covered in fabric? Because when I looked at the room, everything was behind glass. All the data was like, you know, it was hard. I thought data doesn't have to be like that. It can be tactile. So I said, you know, we'll cover it all in fabric, and it'd be kind of strange, and it would be totally different to everything else in the room. And they were like, great. So this is my process. It's very complicated. You know, no idea what I'm doing at the beginning, you know, trying to figure stuff out, and you're trying to get to like, you know, more sort of perfection at the end. You can never get, you know, it's not a perfect circle, as you can see, because all you see is, even in your end work that you might be proud of, you see flaws constantly. And I think that's a good thing to be, and how to look at your work. So yeah, that's my process. So I was trying to figure this stuff out. Things always start for me with sketch. I can't sketch digitally. Some people can, I can't. I like paper because it doesn't judge you. A blank piece of paper and a pencil, you can throw things around on it, and you can show it people, and they know that they can say things without hurting your feelings, because, oh, it's just sketchy at the minute, and that's all right. There's room for criticism, which is good. So I sketched these things out, trying to work out how it was mapped on the wall. And originally there was going to be a graphic and these things on top of it, but in the end we ditched the whole graphic thing. And renders, had to learn how to render things. You know, this is Fusion 360, which I'm sure some of you used, and it's completely amazing, and it's free for students. So you do these horrible prototypes, right? So I hooked up with my friend who is head of textiles in practice at Manchester Metropolitan University, because I had no idea how to do fabrics. And so we did these horrible prototypes, but we're like, oh, yeah, there's something in this. We can see things, and it softens the LEDs, and that might be quite interesting. And, you know, then things start to get more serious. You got to, you know, how do you fabricate these things? How do you fabricate 220 things? So I had to do these technical drawings, again, in Fusion 360, so I could send them, have them made in France, actually, work out a system of how they fit together. Lots of lovely prototyping with electronics. Originally, you can see that I made a prototype, then I eventually got these fabricated in China. And yeah, we did a whole rehearsal at Manchester Met to, you know, do this thing. And then we spent 2 days that we weren't allowed to be in there in the day, so we had to go in at like 6 o'clock at night and work through the night in a building where the air conditioning gets shut off in the height of summer. They didn't tell you that. So we were like drowning in sweat. You know, these are things you don't. And the other thing is, again, naivety. I thought, yeah, I can fix these things to the wall. You know, it works out. We rehearsed it and got these special things for going in plasterboard. And so we got into this like very expensive building on the first night, and I've got my drill. And Kate is there, and she's ironing fabric on the floor of this very expensive business consultancy, and we're going, this is nuts. And I've got my drill. I said, right, I better start. And Kate had done this amazing, you probably saw it then in the little video, she did this amazing like paper thing that planned it all out on the wall so we could pin it up. And we had like a laser level and all that. So I get my drill. I think, yeah, we've rehearsed this. You know, we know how this stuff's going. And I did my drill, and it just went straight through the wall, a massive hole. And I was like, oh, great. So it was like, and all the shops had obviously shut by this time. And we had to like, so we managed to find somewhere that was open late, like a DIY store. And we were in the back of the taxi, and the taxi driver's saying to me, can I just ask, why are you going to this like trade DIY place? Because you don't look like builders. Why are you going to this place at 9:30 at night? I said, well, we've kind of, the reason is we're not builders. We shouldn't be sat in this cab panicking. But we managed to get the right fixings, and over the next 2 days, and we did have scaffolding and stuff. Anyway, here's a little video of, so what it does, it finds data that exists in London.
The shape and texture of
and
objects are
it
studied to
shows
look deep
how the
into
tube
future
lines
of
are running.
communications.
It shows the weather.
We learn
So
to
that was
separate
clouds
the relevant
moving.
from irrelevant in
It's
visual
coloured by
information.
what the
We'll
temperature
be on
is
the
and
way to
the
sending
wind speed
three-dimensional
and
color
stuff like that.
picture messages over
Yeah,
ordinary
how
telephone
you can
lines.
see how the tube lines are running, different lines moving different ways. There's tweets come down the wall, and then there's like random patterns as well. So the idea is that it's you walk into this room and it's a conversation starter for these companies that are paying to spend a day in this room and go, oh, you know what, data maybe data doesn't have to be behind glass, it can do other things, right? It was a lot of fun. It was kind of quite stressful over those 2 days, but you can do this stuff. That's to me, that's the power of the internet. Bringing all these things together. They're made in France, circuits made in China, the fabric was from Germany. So it was a lot of fun. Let's have a look at this. This is a machine I built called the Happiness Machine, and you press a button, and it goes out on the internet and finds people who are blogging about being happy or something, and you can get a receipt of happiness. And I did this many years ago for myself. I don't like the cheesy music anymore. I wish I'd not put that on there, but anyway. But you get this receipt, and you can take it with you, pin it up. The point is as well that it's all about the form factor. So you tear it off and you hold it in your hand, and it's more intimate than if you had printed this out on an A4 sheet of paper. It's like no one's ever going to fall in love with that. But the fact that it's small and fits in your hand totally alters how you feel about it. So this went around the internet, and people blogged about it, which was really nice. It went in various art galleries. And it taught me a lot, this piece, not least of which, do not judge your audience too much. Don't prejudge it. Because I thought I'd make this thing and all the cool people are going to love it, all the cool, young, beautiful people. And whilst they did, it also, of course, appeals to lots of other people, because I wasn't making a thing that was about technology. I was making a thing that was about universalities, such as happiness, which anyone could connect with. And this was in a tiny little gallery that we were setting up in Munich. And as we were setting up, these 3 lovely ladies walked past, and all the things are in English. They're German. And they stood there in the rain for 10 minutes reading it all. And I thought, wow, that's like, I didn't think they were my audience, and they weren't stood there going, I wonder if it uses Arduino to connect to the internet. They don't care, so they're interested in the content. So I think we have to remember that. So you put this stuff out there, you make this stuff for yourself, because you think it deserves to exist in the world. And, from my point of view, I hope that it then garners clients. And so Airbnb got in touch. This was like a few years later. And they said, we're doing this event at Sundance Film Festival, and we love your Happiness Machine. And this house that we're taking over, it's all about neighborhood, and we'd love to have your thing in the corner. And I said, yeah, no, that sounds cool. Now, what the agency meant was we'd love to have it for free, which is, made me feel slightly sick. So I said, look, why don't we could do that? We could definitely do that. But why don't we do something else and ramp it up? Why don't we make 12 of them, and people can text message in about great things in their neighborhood or people they've met in their neighborhood, etc. It's a storytelling device. And they loved that idea. And so I then set about making it once we approved a budget and everything. And I 3D printed 12 of these. Each one took like 8 hours, which I didn't really factor into the budget. Again, learnings. This is called an electric imp, which connects the Wi-Fi, and it's made for scale. It's really, really good. And this is actually just my dining table, actually. My wife came in and said, "What are you doing?" So I'm inventing the future. So, testing these things. And then I'd never made a text message system. So this is called Twilio, which you can use. It's brilliant, really lovely to work with. And it's really cheap as well, I have to say. So people could text in, and then it would go into a back-end system. And then when people pressed the button, it would choose one at random. This was the house that they took over. So this is when I arrived at Sundance. And as a big film fan, I thought Sundance was like, number one, I thought there would be sun. Number two, I thought there'd be dancing. Neither of which happened. It was snowy. It's actually, I don't know if you've been to Sundance, but it's just outside Salt Lake City in Park City, which is actually a ski resort, and it's in January. I hate the snow, so I'm really hoping there's no snow over the next 2 days. So I arrived there, and it's freezing cold, but it was an honor to be there and set this thing up. And this is Christian from Airbnb after a week of people sharing stories. So you can imagine that it started out with nothing, and then people just embraced it. You could only do it actually in the venue. The phone number was in the venue. You couldn't get to it via the internet. And I think we had 5,000 stories. And I thought, if it was me, my text messages are really short. I don't know about you, but I mean, if I write 3 words, that's like War and Peace. So I thought, is anyone going to bother to share this stuff, write on a text message? And the stories we got were so rich. Again, creating a system for others to play within and allow yourself to be surprised by the audience, and they will surprise you. So it gives me hope. It gives me hope in human beings and people. And you can see that, this is a text message. I just couldn't be bothered. But other people were, thankfully. And the stories were so good. They weren't just like, oh, there's a great coffee down the street. They were really rich. And so these are all now in a database. But it was super successful. And all the technology works, which was good. Look at this guy. I mean, come on. Isn't this why we're doing this stuff? He loved it, and he took so many pictures and put it on Instagram. And so I guess we talk about tools a lot, and we use tools to make our work. And in the digital sphere, we can end up, often using tools that are made by others. So it might be something, from an imagery point of view, it might be the whole Adobe suite, which is great. But as a programmer, you can make your own tools and then mold it into what you want it to do. So I like to make things that make other things, is kind of my process. So I'll show you some 3D printed stuff. This is my Twitter activity over several years. So 2007, 2009, 2012. And the more spiky it is, the more active I was on Twitter. So you can see that in 2007, I didn't really know what it was. And then 2012, I've just embraced it, and it's super spiky. And, you can hold it, and you can feel the difference rather than just looking at it. And so I made a tool that would do that. And I've developed that tool so I can terraform an object and have data change that object. So this was something I worked on for a book called Data Walking, where they gave me the data for environmental data that was captured over a year in the Greenwich Peninsula in London, right by Ravensbourne College. And so I could read in this data and play around with it. And so what I did was, these aren't renders, these are real. This is 3D printed, but it's got a wood part to the PLA. So it's partly wood. And these are, the idea was, this is environmental data that is then creating objects that I wanted to then put back into the environment from whence they came. So you can imagine people walking around and they find, you know, horse chestnuts, conkers, and then they go, what's this one? This is really weird. You know, it's not, it's like some alien thing, you know, but it's actually data. And so you think, could we use this in the future to tell people that, oh, the pollution's quite bad today, that this park you're walking around, you know, these self-forming objects, because computers are going to be, you know, the size of a pinprick in how many years, you know, so we'd have these self-forming objects, you know, so kind of future thinking there. Yeah, and so these are just 3D printed on my 3D printer at home. And then I varnished them and colored them, and they do kind of look organic. But it's all made from a tool that I made, so a thing that made a thing. I love that one. And also, you know, the process of making this stuff actually imparts itself on the actual end objects. You know, if I rendered that, it wouldn't look exactly like that, because you can see, you know, where it's gone slightly wrong, or the way it's printed it is part of the objects. And I think that's interesting, bless you. Now, I also do, so this is a job that's not been shown yet. I think it goes live next week. So I'm working with Vivo Barefoot, who make these shoes that are shaped like your foot. And I went on a week-long photo shoot with them, completely dressed inappropriately on a mountain. I don't own outdoor clothing. But I made this tool. So this is all data from the feet. We had like foot sensors in there. I had environmental data. We had brain sensor data. So I can load this into this software that I've made in processing and play around with it, and create this stuff that's all driven by data. So if you follow Vivo Barefoot on Instagram next week, you'll probably be able to see this. And George, who's one of the models, he's one of the nicest people I have ever met. Lovely guy. So, and then there's things like this. So, you know, I'm trying to do my own products as well. I used to have I did products years ago, and so I'm getting back into that again. And this is concrete. This is called Morph. And I created this thing in another piece of software that I'd made, sort of inspired by the data stuff that you just saw. And this is Perlin Noise. So this is a noise field. And I've had them made in concrete. And you think, why, Brendan, have you had them made in concrete? It's because it's a letter holder, and for paper and envelopes, and I've been using the prototype in our hallway for about 4 months, and you can put a load of stuff in it as well. And it's available from produceforuse.com. So that's the only plug. Yeah, so there's this thing. So, and it's all made by code. I don't do anything in post. It's all made in code, and then I get it. And I have a vacuum forming machine as well at home, so I did the prototypes in that. But to me, it's kind of like amazing that we have the possibilities to do this now. Again, I wanted to put this thing into the world, and thankfully people are buying it, which is nice, including Carlo bought one, which is really nice. So she didn't even ask for a discount, which was amazing. So nearly done. Create something to criticize. You know, the process is always, you know, sketchy, and you know, you do this stuff with a client. Just make stuff to talk about, because it's hard to talk about things in the abstract. So there's a sound design company called Factory, not the Tony Wilson Factory Records, but Factory Studios in London, who are world famous. They win a lot of awards, and they do sound design for films and TV and all sorts of people. And they've been going 20 years, and through an agency, they came to me and said, we're going to give you sound for each year that we're going to put together, and can you make like a visualization that we can print and have on the walls in the studio and various other things. So I started doing like unknown pleasures type stuff, and then I wrapped that unknown pleasures around a thing, and I'm just uploading these things to the project site for the client to go, oh, we kind of, that's interesting, that one we don't really like, and we're more kind of over here. Notice the early things are black and white, so no one obsesses about color. I'm just trying to get them to talk about structure, really, at this point, and form. These are weird, I don't know what that is, but I kind of liked it. But all made from sound. And then we started to drill down and think about explosions from a speaker, that kind of thing. And you can see how it was starting to develop. Each one of these is a frequency. And then you can see what it ends up like.
Testing, testing, 1, 2.
So you can see the sound is actually making the graphics. And each frequency is represented in that image. Sometimes sound visualization is so generic. I didn't want that. I want it to be kind of rich, but look like it comes from a collection.
Let's see what
I like the
curiosity can
pneumatic
do.
drill in this. So this is a Honda ad that they did the sound for. So you can see that they come from the same parameters, but each one is different. This was the Olympics theme, the BBC. So originally we weren't going to do these animations, but because my system, this is how it made it before it outputted the high res. When the client saw these animations, they said, can we have that on the website as well? So they exist on the website, another side effect. MailChimp, lovely company to work with. Sometimes you can go to a client and rather than wait for them, you can say, I've got this idea. So I went to them and said, let's explore what it means for physical email, an email in a physical space. And they went, sounds great. So they left me to it, and I did this project called 6 Monkeys. I know that chimpanzees aren't monkeys, but I like the name. So I gave each one a name, each prototype or each thing I was going to make. I gave them all names based on linguistic chimpanzees that were used in linguistic research. These are some of the prototypes. So this one is an object that you can email to do things. So you can say, so the interface is email. And you can say, make it static, but here's an RGB color. And the thing is, once you know the grammar of how to interact with it, you just used email. There was nothing to download. There was no interface to learn. You just spoke to it like a person, as long as it was in the language that it understood. The cool thing is, my brother-in-law, who's not a programmer, he has this still. This is from a few years ago, but he is still under his TV, and he's attached it to IFTTT, which you can connect the web to. So he has he goes windsurfing, so he's connected a weather report to it, so it flashes red if it's too windy to go. It's kind of and he did about 20 of these things. He's not a programmer, but he knows how to use email. So he was controlling this device without being a coder, and so this is email as an interface. That's what the idea was. People love this one. This went nuts on the internet. Why can't you turn email off like a light switch? You put these ideas out there, these questions, and people go, oh yeah, why can't you? And again, this was the one that people were like, where can I buy this? So you could come home and turn your email off for everything, and in the convenience of a switch, or you turn it off for the weekend. And people have these technology things now where they have no technology for the weekend. This was kind of a switch for that. But it was just a prototype. I'm surprised. And Kickstarter got in touch and said, all these could be Kickstarters. I said, yeah, I've done a Kickstarter before. It was successful, but I nearly died. So no, thank you. And weird stuff. Make weird stuff. Muscle wire is amazing. It doesn't make a noise, but it can act like a lever. Before I show you this, so notifications are, by their very nature, they're in your face, aren't they? They're like, you've got email in your face. And I thought, what is the English version, the uptight, polite version of notifications? So I thought, it's kind of embarrassed to tell you that there's a notification. So I made this weird object where, you've got an email from John. And then it goes, oh, you're busy. I'll go back down. Right, so, it's a physical thing, and it's ridiculous. Of course it's ridiculous, but it really got people talking about the work. So put ridiculous things into the world, because you don't know, again, where they might lead. Final one. I think this is important. Everything starts out ugly. I think we're trapped sometimes by the fear of revealing our work early on because we think people are going to criticize it too much, and it's not the beauty that you think is in your head, and you're not there yet. But it always starts out with ugliness, I think. And so this project for Twitter, they came to me and said, we've got this one night in Paris where we're inviting all the art directors from France to this event, and all these screens are embedded in the wall. Could you do something where people could tweet in and something happens? So I said, yeah, no, absolutely, great. So I said, maybe if you look at the screens and they were more like windows and we're looking through into a world that is generated by tweets, that might be interesting. I said, not fish. We're not making fish swimming round, because that would be tacky. So they said, yeah, what sort of thing? So I made, flocking motion, which we've seen a million times. I said, imagine these blocks are tweets, but they're not going to be blocks. And you start the conversation. That's what you do. You're creating something to criticize. So it's not in the abstract anymore. And they say, oh, yeah, we're excited. We can see, imagine these are tweets and, something's happening. So then that's ugly. And then you start to drill down and try and get this poetry and beauty in there. And for some reason, I was just constantly making like kitchen colander type things. I don't know why. These are made from sine waves, and they were not right. They were like, but I was playing around, seeing where it could go. But I wasn't happy with it. Because in that thing I just showed you, they were going around. You could see like they were in an invisible box, and it's quite boring. So I went back. Right at the beginning of the talk, I talked about this digital cupboard. I went back into there and thought, well, I know how to wrap lines around a sphere, and maybe my things should track the line going around a sphere, and maybe it would be more poetic, more beautiful. So I recoded it, and then made these things that were now going around this invisible sphere. And the shapes weren't still right. They were kind of machines. I didn't really want machines. So I took that and then altered it quite considerably, and then I've got this video for you as the last thing I'm going to show. So this is on the night, and you can see me on the left in a minute, still making changes on the night in Paris. My wife's videoing it. It's great, you go to these events, you just have holidays, it's brilliant. But so people could tweet in, and it would create these creatures. And these creatures were generated based on your Twitter profile. So the more prolific you were on Twitter, the more colourful your body was. The longer you've been on Twitter, the bigger your body was. If you were following more people than was following you, then you got big eyes because we said you're a voyeur. And we gave them antennas and all that kind of stuff. And so it was purely made out of code, and it created these meshes in real time. I think we could fit about 200 things on screen at a time, and then each one would drop off as another one came in. So people were tweeting in, and then it would take a selfie, and it would text message them. It would tweet them back with the image of their creation, like a mesh weird creature selfie. So then what I did was, because these are meshes made in real time that are all fully coloured, I called my friend in Manchester, who has an amazing, at the university, they have an amazing full-colour 3D printer. I said, could you print some of these? And he was like, no, he normally prints architectural models. And he was like, yes, please, can I? He's like, something different than a building, please. So I said, well, these are definitely not buildings. so I sent him these creatures, and I kind of, for me, I like them because they look very digital. They're not fish. They're just weird, but they're kind of pixelated as well. My one tip is if you want to make a creature out of anything, put some eyes on it. That's all you have to do. So there's this one, which is super colourful and wonderful, and this person is obviously on Twitter a lot and has been on Twitter a while. I don't know the gender. That was the only thing is I didn't apply any gender to them. And again, the process has added elements to it in the 3D printing. So this was sent to the client again as a thank you. This is one of the voyeur ones. You can see the eyes are massive because no one's really following them. It's quite sad, but they're following lots of other people. So then I thought, well, I've been on, as you've seen, I've been on Twitter since 2007, and I'm on there quite a bit, and I thought, well, I'll put me in it. I'll put me into my own system, and see what I get out of it. Because this person's like, whoa, this is the person you want to hang out with at a party. This is when this person walks into a room, that's everyone wants to be with, right? And then I don't want to be a voyeur, so I thought I'll put me into the system, and I got that. I was like, oh, great. So obviously there must be a bug in the software. But you know what I do like? I like the fact I've got lovely mascara, which I quite like. And normally I only put mascara on a Wednesday. So yeah, play around with this stuff. And I'm going to leave you now with some last-minute thoughts. Some of the stuff we've been through, but don't work without contracts and all that kind of stuff. Look outside your own world. Be interested in other things other than the things that you think you're interested in. And the client wants to make great work with you. The client often gets a bad rap, and it can be tortuous at times. But leave space in the work for the unexpected to grow. Go deeper. Busy is not a badge to be proud of. And find time to be bored. Out of boredom can come some beautiful stuff, and embrace naivety. As you've seen, a lot of my stuff comes out of naivety. But I think we're done. Thank you very much for listening.